Personally, I really enjoy the new Sony XV900. It's a large portable box speaker that's a good option if you need a large speaker for your man cave, but you can also use it around the house or outdoors without having to worry about having a wall outlet nearby. However, the XV900 is pretty big, so today we're going to compare the XV900 to its smaller siblings, the Sony XP700 and the Sony XP500. Now, when it comes to pricing, the XP500 is the most affordable speaker here, retailing for $400. The XP700 has a retail price of $550, and the XV900 has a retail price of $900. However, in Sony fashion, all of these speakers like to routinely go on sale. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great, and if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular, so I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. Now, if you need something portable, the XP500 is going to be the most convenient option here because it's the smallest and lightest speaker here, weighing in at 25 pounds. Now, the XP700 is relatively easy enough to travel with as well, and a single person can manage to move the speaker all by themselves because it weighs in at 37 pounds. Whereas with the XV900, this speaker is significantly larger than these other two speakers, and moving the speaker around can sometimes be a two-person job because of its size and because it weighs in at 59 pounds. Now, the XV900 does have built-in wheels, but these wheels are really only useful if you're on a flat and smooth surface. Because if you try to use these wheels while you're on asphalt, you're better off just carrying it. Now, even though all of these speakers are technically portable, they aren't the most durable speakers out there. All of these speakers are using relatively soft plastics, and they are very quick to collect scratches. And they all have thin metal grills on the front, which are easy to dent. However, with both the XP500 and XP700, these smaller speakers are IPX4 rated, meaning that they are water resistant, so a little bit of rain or a spill won't hurt them, whereas the XV900 has no water resistance to it, and it doesn't even have rubber grommets on the back to protect its port panel or charging port. So with all of these speakers, if you plan on taking them somewhere, you are going to have to baby them, especially the XV900. But next up, there's the light feature on these speakers. Now personally, I'm not very impressed with the light feature found on the XP500 and XP700. They're small, they aren't all that dynamic, and sometimes they can be hard to see. But personally, I do enjoy the light feature found on the XV900. This light feature goes all around the speaker, it's a little more dynamic, but more importantly, it has floor lights, which gives this light feature a much larger area of effect. Now, you definitely shouldn't pick up a speaker because of its light feature, but I do like the light feature on the XV900, and I really do hope that Sony's future box speakers also have floor lights. However, if you do decide to use the light feature on these speakers, that is going to take its toll on the battery life. Now, when it comes to battery life, Sony loves to put these large headline numbers, but in reality, you're not going to get as much battery life as what's advertised on the box depending on how you use these speakers. Now, both the XV900 and XP700 have an advertised battery life of 25 hours. However, that advertised battery life of 25 hours is with both of these speakers playing with their light feature turned off, but that's with both of these speakers playing with their mega bass feature turned on, which is good. However, with the XP700, that's with it playing with its battery set at 25% volume, which is an okay listening volume. And with the XV900, that's with it playing at 30% volume, which is already a really good listening volume. However, if you were to use both of these speakers at max volume with their light feature turned on and their mega bass feature turned on, the XP700 is good for around 5 hours of playback time, and the XV900 is good for around 4 hours of playback time. Overall, battery life on these speakers really varies depending on how you use them. So if you're trying to use these speakers at a higher volume, and if you're trying to shake the walls in your house, don't expect to get anywhere near that advertised battery life of 25 hours on either of these two speakers. But then there's the XP500. Now, the XP500 has an advertised battery life of 20 hours, and that's with this speaker playing at 30% volume, with the light feature turned off, but with the mega bass feature turned on. However, 30% volume on this speaker is nothing. It's good for like maybe ambiance, but it's not good for actually listening to music. And even at max volume, the XP500 is very underwhelming when it's running off of its internal battery. So personally, I feel that most people are going to have to use the XP500 between 80 to 100% volume on a regular basis, and that's going to cause you to drain your battery super quick. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to two devices at the same time so that you and a friend can both be DJ. They all have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And when it comes to audio codecs, all of these speakers have support for SBC, AAC, and Sony's own LDAC. But if you want to, you can always just use a wired connection with any of these speakers because all of these speakers still have a 3.5mm audio jack. But unfortunately, none of these speakers have an audio out jack, so you can't daisy chain any other speakers to these speakers like you can with some other box speakers out there. However, something that the XV900 does have going for it is that it has an optical port, and it also comes included with an optical cable. So if you want, you can always hook it up to your TV. And finally, all of these speakers have USB-A ports on them so that you can either charge your own devices or you can plug in a USB stick and play music off of it. However, the only thing that I do have to point out here is that both the XP700 and XP500 have two USB-A ports, whereas the larger and more premium XV900 only has one USB-A port. Now, personally, I don't really mind, but I thought I'd just point this out. But as always, I still really wish that all of these speakers had a USB-C port on them that would allow me to charge my own phone and use it as a wired connection. But more importantly, with all of these speakers, they all have dual 1/4-inch inputs, so you can plug in a pair of microphones and do karaoke, or you can also plug in a guitar. The only thing to keep in mind here is that you can't adjust the sound of this microphone on these speakers like you can with some other speakers out there. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. Regarding speaker setups, all three of these speakers are fairly different. The XP500 has your standard dual front mid-firing woofers with an exhaust port that shoots out the back, and it has dual front mid-firing tweeters. Pretty standard if you ask me. Whereas with the XP700, it also has dual front mid-firing woofers with an exhaust port that shoots out the back. But this speaker has a total of 4 tweeters on it, 3 of which are found on the front, and there's one that shoots out the back and upwards. However, all of these tweeters aren't always firing. If you have this speaker standing upright like this, it'll use these 2 tweeters and the one in the back. And if the speaker is laying on its side, it'll use these 2 tweeters. And finally, here's the XV900, which I feel has the most interesting setup here. This speaker has a huge front mid-firing woofer with exhaust ports that shoot out the front. There's dual mid-range drivers, and the speaker has a total of 6 tweeters on it, which are always firing. There are 2 tweeters on the front. There's a tweeter on each side, and there are 2 more tweeters that shoot out the back and upwards. But now, we're going to jump into the sound test. All of these speakers are playing while running off of their internal battery, and they're all playing with their mega bass feature turned on. However, the XV900 is playing while at 75% volume, whereas these other 2 speakers are playing at max volume.
Something about you feels so different. Yeah, you mess me up inside. It's like your energy was kissing my soul back to life was living. Now it feels like every part of me is dying. Yeah, you're gone without a trace. You left me where no one can find me. There's no sign of life out here. I scream. There's no sign of life out here. I scream and it goes silent. I fight so hard, but I can't find my way out. Lost all the vision of time. Only I'm lost in my mind, and it goes down. Goes down. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind, and this goes down.
So sound quality wise, in general, Sony speakers lean more towards a warmer sound signature. But personally, I can't help but feel that the XV900 doesn't sound as warm as these other two speakers, and it sounds more open, thanks to the mess of tweeters found on the speaker and also the dedicated mid-range drivers, which helps give this speaker more definition in the mids and vocals than with these other two speakers. So with the XV900, I do feel that you are going to get better sound quality out of it when compared to these other two speakers. But what's more noticeable with the XV900 is that this speaker is going to get much louder and have more wall shaking bass than these other two speakers. Now with the XP700, I feel that this speaker gets decently loud and has a decent amount of bass to it while it's running off of its internal battery. Whereas with the XP500, like I mentioned earlier, this speaker just doesn't get as loud as you'd expect it to when it's running off of its internal battery. However, if we were to use any of these speakers while they're plugged in, you are going to get a performance boost out of them. They're all going to get louder and they're all going to have more bass. And when you use the XP500 while it's plugged in, that's when the speaker performs as you'd expect. But obviously, the XP700 is going to be louder than the XP500, and the XV900 is going to be even more loud. So overall, when it comes to sound quality, all of these speakers lean towards a warmer sound signature. Now, if you want to get a brighter sound signature out of these speakers, you can always customize their EQ to your liking through their app. But sound quality wise, obviously, the larger the speaker, the louder and more bass it's going to have. However, with the XV900, I do feel that this speaker has better SMS separation and better definition in the mids, thanks to its mess of tweeters and dedicated mid-range drivers. Well, finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, all of these speakers are using Sony's Party Connect, meaning that you can wirelessly pair your XV900, XP700, or XP500 together and get them to all play in sync, and you can have up to 100 speakers paired together. However, if you want to get left and right stereo sound going, you have to have two of the exact same speakers. But the really cool thing about Sony's Party Connect is that you can pair your larger box speakers to any of Sony's smaller speakers that are also using Party Connect, like either an XG500, XG300, XE300, XE200, an XP43, XP33, or to an XB23. Now, even though Sony's Party Connect is very accommodating and it gets the job done, personally, it is not my favorite speaker pairing protocol out there. Sometimes it does take forever to get all of your speakers to get paired up. Sometimes all of your speakers don't get paired up on the first try, so you're going to have to go through the pairing process multiple times, and sometimes echoes do form. Now, Sony's Party Connect does address this echo after a while, but it's only a matter of time before that echo comes back. So overall, Sony's Party Connect is very accommodating and it gets the job done. However, just be warned, if you do plan on using this feature and if you plan on pairing all of your speakers together on a regular basis, just know that sometimes you could run into some hassles. And if you are having trouble with the Sony's Party Connect, just know that it's not just you. But with all that being said, personally, I really like and recommend the Sony XV900. I think the XV900 is a great speaker to consider if you need something big to fill your man cave with sound. But also, if you want, you can always use it around the house or outside without having to worry about needing a power outlet. And thanks to its speaker setup, I feel the XV900 has better SMS separation and better defined mids than these other two speakers. But then, there's the XP700. Now, this speaker is more portable than the XV900. XP700. But personally, it is very hard for me to recommend this speaker as strongly as I recommend the XV900, because the XP700 does get outshined by its direct competitor. However, if you're someone that's already heavily invested in Sony's speaker ecosystem, it could make sense to go with the XP700. And finally, there's the XP500. Again, getting the speaker really only makes sense if you're already heavily invested in Sony's speaker ecosystem. But just be warned, if you do decide to pick up the XP500, its volume performance can be a little underwhelming when running off of its internal battery. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.